what the building looks like. And I can't vote on something unless I see an accurate representation. Secondly, I agree with Barbara about the four criteria and Trish that have not been met for the sign. And I think you need to revisit the sign. As for the super graphic, I was initially opposed to super graphics in this district, and we actually had a project come before us several months ago, and I was the only one who voted against it. So we've already set a precedent in the district. So I would not vote against the super graphic, but I also agree with David that it just doesn't hold together. I don't understand why the bottom is different than the top. The strength of the Wynwood building in Wynwood is that it's one design that carries throughout the entire building. That's what makes it so strong and so photogenic. I don't think this makes it. I agree. I understand your intent and what you'd like to do, but I do agree with some of the board members that perhaps you need to go back and take a relook at this.
Also, the difference with the other sign was that it was already painted, and it had cost the owner of the building a substantial amount of money. And he was unaware of the necessity to come to the board with a sign. So we really appreciate you coming to us first.
Yes, we do.
And
Wanted to go about it right way.
it's very gracious of you to submit a second design, which we don't have. So what is the proper procedure for what the situation we're in?
I'm going to ask the city attorney to reference this because obviously we can vote yay or nay. What happens if we vote nay on the project as opposed to, as Barbara suggested, withdrawing the project?
That's what I do. Yeah.
And what would the cost be if he withdraws it? If he has to go back to the well and apply again, does he have to come up with more money versus if he withdraws this current application just comes through again to be reconsidered without costing him another dollar?
Well, withdrawal of an application would require a new application, so they would have to apply. They can request a deferral of the matter so that they can meet with staff and revise the application as suggested by the board. But I think some of the fundamentals of why they're here is kind of missed by the applicant. I think the chair has stated it well that you're in a historic district, so it's not a matter of taste, but it's a matter of whether or not it meets the guidelines of the historic district as presented in the staff report. And I don't know if that fundamentally can be corrected between now and then, but what I would recommend, if that's the posture, is that the applicant requests a deferral from the board, and that's what the board do, is grant them a deferral to amend.
And just as a matter of course, what is the number of votes that would be required to approve this today?
The majority.
Pardon? The
Majority vote, yes.
Okay. So since we have 6, it would be 3, 4?
4.
4. Okay.
I just want to add something that I was reading on, it's section B of the application. It's actually page 2. It's both section B. It's the bottom. It's ending D3C2. And it calls for the size, and it distinguishes between the super graphic and the sign. And when you look at the code, it calls for the size of the proposed painted wall as approximately 200 feet. 200 of 800 feet. So let's leave the super graphic aside for a moment and just go down this path one moment. If you look at the totality of the wall, it's 800 feet, and it's calling for 25% of that. So it does nail that number. And if we were to bifurcate for a moment, take the super graphic, take the sign, my interpretation of this is that the sign meets code. If they left off the stripes, if the stripes and the super graphic were gone, then the way I'm reading this, it would work under what we're supposed to interpret it under. I can't make that amendment for the applicant, but I'm perceiving it and reading it right in front of me. That's the way I'm reading it. So if you're telling us the controlling force here is get that part up, which is the sign, I'm reading this, it would work, but you'd have to, according to code, you'd have to get rid of the super graphic almost entirely to meet that 25% criteria. So
Done. Yeah.
would we be able, I don't want to call for a verbal amendment of their application before us tonight, but it certainly seems like in light of that, we have a lot closer of a middle ground here than when we started, because it does work within the confines of what it's holding.
I understand what you're saying, but I still have a real issue with the 4 criteria that the signage doesn't meet. And since we as a board have already set a precedent in the district that super graphics are okay, I would be very hesitant to set a precedent for signs like this, because once it appears in one building, it'll appear up and down the street. And that's what I'm concerned about.
You're concerned that you set a precedent on another building that you're saying that it will fall alongside on all the other buildings? Is that, I'm trying to
Well,
understand.
a sign like this, which is not the typical sign, that's what I have a concern with.
Understood.
Because, as I said, we've already set a precedent with the super graphic, but I do believe that if this can help to rejuvenate the district, go for it.
That's our plan. We're looking to rejuvenate the district.
No, but again, I still have an issue with the accuracy of the drawings.
Understood.
Do you have any comments as to what the assistant city attorney described in terms of the options here, in terms of a deferral, or would you like to go ahead with a vote?
I believe when it comes to this situation, a deferral would probably be the right move on this.
Yeah.
So that we could come back with one that you're willing to be okay
I
with.
think it would, and if you can work with Tricia.
Yeah. Absolutely. Our goal is really to get this right and to make sure everybody is okay with what we're doing
Okay.
and improve.
And we understand that you tried to come last time, and
Yeah.
obviously there was no quorum. So, and we're sorry to push it back once, but
Yeah.
I think it's important because this is an important street in an important district, and these are important
Absolutely.
decisions.
Absolutely.
So
So
do we
what's the
need to vote on a
procedure?
deferral?
Yes,
We do.
yes.
Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion that per the request of the applicant for a deferral, this board approves a deferral for reconsideration and conversations with Trish and staff to give a new proposal that would meet, better meet the guidelines.
I'll second.
Okay. Should we have
Do we need to be specific on the date of when that's being deferred to the August 2nd HPB meeting, or?
well, if for them to appear at the August 2nd meeting, when would they have to have all their materials submitted?
Would that give
Last
them enough
Friday.
time to do what they got to do with your team and themselves and their, just to go off conversation for a second, I would strongly recommend that your next drawing
Yeah.
be accurate to this building. The striping on this is just very confusing. It's almost cartoonish, and I don't mean to insult anybody.
Well, it is a Photoshop mock-up. It's
Yeah,
always
and
gonna
it-
it's
and-
always
and-
gonna look like
and
that.
I
you know?
think it would serve you better
Yeah.
if you showed the integrity of the building as it can be complemented with your sign and it doesn't lose any integrity with your sign. This takes so much away from the building. It doesn't even look like the building. That's I think a problem for Arthur, especially being an architect.
Understood. Understood.
And I have one more question, basically for Tricia, because on the front page of the application here, it mentioned that the building was constructed in 1997. But if we look at the picture of the existing building, it certainly looks like it was far earlier than 1997.
Honestly, we don't own the building. I wouldn't be aware, but that's what we've been given from the landlord.
Yeah, that is what's listed in the Broward
Yeah.
County Property Appraiser, and it's also, there is a permit record for the building.
Yeah, this building, I think it was designed like that for the previous tenant to make it look like a saloon, like a,
Oh,
yeah. So we that's all
Okay.
we know.
so we need to vote. you want to call the roll, please?
So are we clarifying a date?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so can the applicant clarify? Well, first of all,
So to be considered for the August 2nd meeting, I would need updated materials from the applicant no later than July 21st. So that's
Works.
all new packets by then.
All new permit application you're suggesting?
Not a permit application, it's the Historic Preservation Board Certificate of Appropriateness.
Okay.
Application, we don't necessarily need a new application form and all of that since it's being deferred, just any updated materials as far as any new renderings or images that reflect what you're actually going to update your proposal to.
Are you able to work with us as far as meeting the criteria? If we send you one, you could tell us, hey, this is not, can you do this, do that? That way we kind of get it right. So when we come August 2nd,
We can have a discussion, but as per our guidelines, the direction that you're headed in or have proposed already does not meet our criteria. So we have to review what our guidelines state within the Historic Preservation Design Guidelines citywide, as well as what the criteria states within the H1 district specifically.
okay, understood.
so you are okay with the August 2nd date?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Lyons? This is to
Yeah,
defer-
if I vote yes, what does it mean?
To defer
Defer.
to August.
I vote
deferral.
yes. Okay.
Mr. Carney?
Yay.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Marcus?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Next.
Thank you,
Thank you.
and good luck. Thank you. We are now going to case number 2, which is 1022 West Las Olas Boulevard. Are there any disclosures?
I drove by the property.
I will not, I will be observing, but I will not be voting on this because I am on the board for the Fire Museum and Education.
So you are abstaining.
Yes.
I also drove by the property. I've also been through the property in previous years and had a complete tour.
I had a conversation with the Crush Group on it
Okay,
a couple months ago.
so we'll read the,
Richard?
sorry.
I drive by it every day, and I spoke with Mr. Crush as well.
Okay, I'll proceed with my staff report. This is our certificate of appropriateness for major alteration for the replacement of the existing solid panel garage doors with new glass panel garage doors. This property is located at 1022 West West Las Olas Boulevard, and it is a designated historic landmark. It's also located within the Sailboat Bend Historic District. It was constructed in 1927 and designed by local architect Francis Abreu in the Mediterranean Revival style. The garage doors that are there right now, I'll change the image, are not the originals. You can see below on the picture on the lower half of your screen the historic images of the fire station. And then there are also images that we've had access to through the Fort Lauderdale Historical Society that show renderings of the fire station initially. And the doors that are appearing in the renderings aren't necessarily the design that it ended up being in the historic photos, but it does show on the plan of the historic renderings that the doors originally were bifold. So when we are looking at replacing doors per the historic design guidelines, you typically want to go back to what the original design is. We don't necessarily have great documentation of what they exactly look like, except for the images, the historic images, as well as these renderings. But we do know that they were bifold. So typically that would be the most appropriate to go back to is something that is a bifold. What's being proposed is a roll-up door with glass panels. The applicant has provided images, which are at the top of the screen right now, showing on the left-hand side what it would look like superimposed in the in the fire station museum. And then on the right-hand side, an image of an actual garage door, what it looks like, what it would be fabricated as. In this scenario, they're not going to be making any adjustments to the opening. They're not going to make any further alterations to the structure. It would just simply be replacing those doors, but like I said, preferably it would be designed in a fashion that is more related to the original and going back to that way. But for the most part, this application does meet most of the criterion within the sailboat bend material and design guidelines. It does specifically state that garage doors need to be of a certain width. It limits that width. Obviously, in this scenario, we have garage doors that already exist, so it's not necessarily applicable to this particular application. So with that, I'll read the summary conclusion. In accordance with sections 47-2411 D3CI and 47-2411 D3CII of the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP-HP21015 located at 1022 West Las Olas Boulevard meets the criteria as outlined in section 47-2411 D3CI of the ULDR and partially meets the criteria as outlined in section 47-2411 D3CII of the ULDR. I did put in one condition, which is typical, that this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
The applicant? Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as far as disclosure goes, I believe we did speak prior to the last meeting that most people were not here. We did not have a quorum, so I didn't know if you recalled that. We did speak on the phone.
Didn't say anything, but
Yeah. So, okay, give me a moment. I need to upload my PowerPoint. Much of this is going to be repetitive to what is in Ms. Logan's staff report, but we did want to walk you through. Here we go. There we go. Okay, my name is Jason Crush with Crush Law on behalf of the Fort Lauderdale Fire and Safety Museum, which is a 50-year long-term tenant of this property. The property is owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale. It was an active fire station until the early 2000s, and until the new fire station 2 was brought online and this station was decommissioned. It is located right there at Palm Ave and West Las Olas Boulevard. Many of you have probably driven by it and seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. I know Richard lives right down the street. Some of the images that Tricia shared, and I'll share as well, these are the only real historic photos we have from the Fort Lauderdale Historic Society and from the Fort Lauderdale Fire and Safety Museum. They have these on their website and they show them in the property with the old engines when it was called Fire Station 3. Just to share with you, the Fort Lauderdale Fire and Safety Museum, their mission statement is to preserve the architecture of this building, to educate the public about tradition and service of the Fort Lauderdale Fire Department and its heroes, teach and educate in an exciting way fire, medical, severe weather preparedness, and as you can see on the screen, many other mission statement things that are educational in nature. And that's one of the reasons why the volunteer nonprofit board of the Fire Museum wanted to put in these clear doors, is so that, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me show you. This is what the property looked like in 2005 when the volunteers took it from the city of Fort Lauderdale under lease. It had been in disrepair because the city of Fort Lauderdale was not maintaining it because they knew they were decommissioning it, and it had been in operation for such a long time. After thousands and thousands of hours of volunteer time, everyone here, we have a couple members from the board. We have former Commissioner John Aurelius, who spearheaded this back in the 2000s after he was a commissioner. One of your own board members is on the board as well. These folks put in thousands and thousands of hours to restore the Fire Museum to what it is today. And many of our children have grown up going to this Fire Museum for education on fire safety, to ride the fire trucks, to see the fire trucks, to see the restored apparatus. Our request is, as Tricia stated, to replace the existing solid panel doors, which were put in when it was an operational fire station. We don't know maybe 20, 30 years ago they were replaced, and they are the flimsy aluminum roll-up doors that you see on many of the older fire stations. As Tricia pointed out, we do have the original floor plan that was drawn by Francis Obrea. And if you look on the screen, you can see I've outlined here, it does show that they were in-swing bifold doors. I mean bifold meaning one on each side, and they almost barn doors. This was the 20s. So, and you can kind of see the outline of the engines which would have been in that area. We believe, and I think any architects and contractors will understand, that hurricane impact standards are impossible to meet with an in-swing door. You can't protect against water intrusion. You can't protect against weather intrusion. And to make it, and truthfully, you would have to build a roof structure at the front to keep the water intrusion, to meet water intrusion code. You would have to be 50% of the height of the door, and we don't want to touch the building. The building is beautiful today, and it's how it is. We can see that there's that lattice work in-swing doors in the pictures that Ms. Logan referred to. We think that in that spirit, oops, hold on. I think that in that spirit, this is the existing doors today, which we know they look like old fire doors, you know, old roll-up fire doors, but you know that it's a fire station. I mean, we don't want everybody to think that this is just another Francis Obrea house. There's several of them in Fort Lauderdale. We all know where they are. We want everyone to know this is a fire station designed by Francis Obrea. As Ms. Logan pointed out, you can see on the rendering that was drawn by Mr. Obrea that there were paneled doors at the time, because that is consistent with the Mediterranean revival architecture of that time period. We don't know why or when the the angled diagonal crosshatch doors were installed. Might have just been a design choice of the contractor. Maybe the woodworker who designed the doors did it. So if we all know that if you can look around in the United States and the world in general and find other historic fire stations that do have this similar type of door structure, I think all of us can realize that a red door with glass panels on it is a fire station door. So we don't think it's inconsistent with the feel. We don't think it detracts from the architectural style designed by Francis Obrea at the time. And actually, in the lower right corner of this image, this structure is in Topeka, Kansas, and it was designed and built in 1927. It is a Mediterranean revival and a little bit of Spanish colonial revival that does have glass panel doors in it. So it's consistent with the architectural era. We're not trying to make it look earlier. We're not trying to make it look later. We're just trying to open this to the public, to be light for the interior in the engine room, and to allow people to see the restored engines when they're driving by when the doors are closed, which they can't today. I mean, volunteers have spent thousands of hours and hundreds and thousands of dollars restoring the equipment. We want everyone to be able to see it. So this is our sketch of what the door panels would be from a dimensional standpoint. As Tricia said, there is a limit to the width of the doors, but we don't want to touch the openings of the doors. We're not going to reduce the opening of the doors, and these doors are mounted on the back side. The doors are actually, I keep talking about thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of volunteers. The doors are to be donated by Jackie Trout at Electric Door Lift here in Fort Lauderdale, and they will be hurricane-rated doors donated and installed by him if this application is approved this evening. We can't thank him enough. I know Jim Brandurnan from the board is going to put a big flag out front with his logo on it, because it's a massive donation.
Could you address the comment in the staff report that talks about rectangular or square patterns? Since the historic slide you showed, all of those historic buildings show square openings, which, as an architect, I know were much more appropriate in that era, because I fear that what's being proposed with these long rectangles is far too modern for the age of the building.
I can address it because it's a factor of the way the doors are constructed. I mean, to do a full custom door and do the square panels might be able to be done, but it would, don't think we could get it donated.
It's been done in all of these 4 pictures.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. They are more square in these pictures, or lateral in nature with the other one with a curved structure. They do go up in a more lateral sense. It's the best I can do.
Okay.
So,
Well, let's hear from the rest of the board.
well, and I do think that the putting in the bifold doors, while I agree with everything in Ms. Logan's staff report, that we, yes, we partially meet it because of the width of the doors. I think that's reasonable, that we meet all the other criterion. The one criterion we don't meet is that we would put bifold in-swing doors, which I think is
Well, they wouldn't meet hurricane codes.
impossible to do at this point, right? I'd like to close with the roll-up doors have been in place for decades. The proposed glass panel doors will be impact rated. The doors will provide for the reduction in wind and water and dust intrusion. Glass paneling will showcase the restored fire apparatus and welcome the public into the space. The proposed doors will not detract from the historic significance of the structure. And as such, we respectfully request approval of this certificate of appropriateness, and we're here for any questions. And I think that Commissioner Aurelius and Jim Brandurnan might want to speak as well in support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone have any questions from the board? If not, I will start. I have a real concern about the size of the glass openings. I have no problem with the roll-up doors. I have no problem with the size of the doors, nothing else. But I really think that the elongated rectangles are not historically accurate, as was shown in the 4 pictures you showed us where they're all square. And if you look in the old rendering from Francis Abreu, although it's hard to read, one can see that they're more square. So the shape of the panels is square. We also have another application coming up, application 5, of a house that was built in the same era, 27, 24, and they are also showing square openings. That's my concern is for such an important structure, I don't believe this does the structure justice. That's all.
Oh, understood.
And it's easy to change, but I can't address the financial aspects of it.
Was that a question? Did you want a response?
If you have anything to say.
Yeah, I think that we could probably spend some time doing some Googling and find rectangular doors and other structures. I just happened to use the most significant buildings that I could find that were fire stations. I will tell you that the doors that have been there for decades now do not contribute to the historic nature of the building at all.
You understand.
And any perceived detriment to the historic applicability of the building by using a rectangular door will be de minimis in my opinion.
Rectangular.
I respect your
You
opinion.
meant to say rectangular glass.
Yes, rectangular glass, I'm sorry. But I respect your opinion.
Does anyone else on the board have anything?
I'll say that all things considered, this building, this beautiful museum that everybody did such a nice job on is ready to be approved. I don't have a problem with it. I don't see it as a distraction. I agree with you that if we were looking for the perfect situation, we would have square windows.
But we are the Historic Preservation Board.
All I'm saying is I think they've done a good enough job to be approved, and we should give them that little bit of wiggle room is not enough to turn this proposal down. I think the application should fly just the way it is, and that's all I got to say.
Don, do you have? No, wait, there's other.
Well, let's hear from everybody.
I think it's a great improvement to the structure. I think it looks really sharp, and while I completely appreciate Mr. Chair's comments as to the rectangular versus the square design, I think going from where it's currently existing in its with these roll-up doors to where we now are looking, it's a tremendous improvement. I'm scared to walk my 2-year-old by there now because he's going to freak out every time he can see the fire truck. But other than that, no, you guys knocked it out of the park. I really love it, and I look forward to seeing it. So well done.
Thank you. Barbara?
Well, the issue that the staff had was the bifold doors, not the windows.
Well, they raised the windows too.
Pardon?
The windows
I
are
thought they said they meet the criterion.
under item A on the second page. At the bottom
It
of
says
the first
application
paragraph.
meets the criterion.
Correct.
And then it says application meets the criterion under C, and it says application meets the criterion under B. It's only on C, page,
No, on A, it says the renderings show a more rectangular or square pattern in the design, which is kind of vague.
right. But their real objection is the bifold doors. The staff's objection in terms of it not meeting the historical criterion. But you say you can't do bifold doors, is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, you can't do that because of hurricane codes. Well, I will just end the discussion saying I'm probably in the minority here, but I still think that judging from the evidence you've submitted,
Well, I would argue that the Francis Abrea rendering is more rectangular than square, but as you said, it's hard to
exactly.
tell.
I was going
More
to reference that.
rectangular than square, right.
I'm sorry.
I would say that the Francis Abrea sketch is maybe a little bit more rectangular than square, but it is very difficult to tell from a 1927 drawing.
Well, you
I think
can
it's pretty-
tell even with a under a microscope.
I think it's pretty clear they're square.
Yeah, it is
Oh,
pretty
well.
clear.
It's
I'm
also,
always in favor of following historic guidelines.
Mm. Sure.
isn't there also a square pattern to the right on the wall next to the doors? I don't know what that is. If you
The
could flip
grill
back
on
to
the
your
right?
examples.
You're talking here? Are you talking about the actual building itself?
Yeah, I'm talking about the wall adjacent to the doors.
That's can you see it on the,
You could see it in one of your photographs.
which is up now?
Pardon?
Is it on the screen, your screen?
No,
Oh, I lost the presentation. There.
no.
Can
go
I make a
back.
motion?
Can you go back?
Yes.
So you could see the side of there. You see on the side of the building?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a square pattern also?
Yeah, but that's no longer existing. It's
Oh,
on
that's
the
no
other
longer-
side. Yeah, it's kind of like the grate, wrought iron grate.
That's what, yeah, okay.
Would you like to speak? Oh, well, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Chair and Mr. City Attorney, I may need your help on the language on making this motion to approve.
Read the last paragraph on that report.
Hold on, he's gonna.
Would you like to speak before we
Motion
make a
to
motion?
approve the resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP HP 21015, located at 1022 West Los Olas Boulevard, based on the following findings of fact, i.e. based on facts and findings as outlined in the staff memorandum, and if conditions apply, is subject to the following conditions.
That's great. What I would like you to clarify for me is in the staff memorandum, in the particular criterion that it says that they say it does not meet. If you would clarify for me that the board finds that it does meet the criteria of 472411 D3C 2, which states that all building structure sites shall be recognized as products of their own time, alterations which have no historical basis, and which seeks to create an early appearance shall be discouraged. That this does not offend that criteria.
I agree with what you just said.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, I'll read the resolution into the record, and then,
Maybe a second? Or no?
oh, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Recording clerk, are you ready for me to read the resolution? A resolution of the Historic Preservation Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations for the property located at 1022 West Los Olas Boulevard, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for replacement of existing solid panel garage doors with new glass panel garage doors, case number UDP-HP 21015. We have a roll call vote at this time.
No.
Mr. Carney?
Yay.
Mr. Parker, you're abstaining, right?
Abstain.
Mr. Rosa? Yes. Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Marcus?
I'm voting no only because I really don't think, as an architect, the openings are historically accurate. Otherwise, I certainly think it's a wonderful project.
We have a 3-2.
2 yes.
It's approved.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So we're now case number 3, and this is 220 Southwest 2nd Street. And Tricia, I have a question about this application. Because this is the application that there are actually, this is the building that there are 2 applications. One for
Yes,
sign
there are
and
2 applications for this same address.
I would propose, if we could, to switch the order and talk about the major alterations before we talk about the signage.
You're the chair.
Is that okay, Mr. City Attorney? You would like to take item number 4 first and then item number 3?
Yes, traditionally we would do that at the beginning of the meeting when they approve the agenda, but yes, you may rearrange the agenda at this time. Announce the item that we will now be hearing, please.
So Tricia, I will let you read I can't seem to.
So we'd have to have disclosures for both items at this time, since they're at the same
So at
address.
this time, we'll have disclosures for UDP HP 21016 and UDP HP 21017.
We're going to start with Barbara.
Barbara,
I'm sorry, what?
disclosures,
Oh, yes, I drove by it. Yeah.
okay?
I've visited, yes.
Okay.
I did not drive by.
Richard?
Drive-by.
And I was a drive-by.
So we'll be hearing case UDP HP 21017 at this time.
Correct.
Okay, I'll proceed with the staff report. This is a certificate of appropriateness for major alteration for after-the-fact storefront window and door installation. This structure is located in the H1 or Himmershey Historic District, and it's located at 220 Southwest 2nd Street. It was constructed in 1928 per the Broward County Property Appraiser's Office. The request, like I said, is for an after-the-fact installation of new storefront windows and doors on the front elevations. This building sits on a corner lot, so it has 2 facades that have street frontages. There are several alterations that occurred when this took place that they did not obtain a certificate of appropriateness for. They did have a permit issued to them. These alterations include an enlargement of the openings on the western bay on Southwest 2nd Street, and they removed an existing knee wall and installed horizontal sliding doors. There was a reconfiguration of the eastern bay on Southwest 2nd Street to install a storefront door and a window that removed a portion of the existing knee wall and increased the height of the existing knee wall. And then there was a removal of a double door corner entrance and installation of a horizontal slider window, and removal of storefront window and transom on Southwest 3rd Avenue, and installation of a horizontal slider window with a fixed glass transom above. This also increased the height of the existing knee wall. They also applied a dark tinting on all the window and door glass. And on the images, you can see an image of the original drawing of the exterior that showed the configuration of the windows and doors on this property. And then on the right-hand side is the existing conditions with all of the alterations in place. And the photo on the lower side of lower portion of the slide in front of you is the appearance prior to the alterations. The application does not meet any of the criterion that's outlined in the code. The replacement windows and doors overall create an altered appearance of what existed previously. And when you reconfigure the fenestration size and placement and different types of doors that didn't exist at the time of construction, it does create a different effect to the exterior of the structure. With that, I'll read the summary conclusion. In accordance with sections 472411 D3CI and 472411 D3CII of the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP-HP 21017, located at 220 Southwest 2nd Street, does not meet the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CI of the ULDR, and does not meet the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CII of the ULDR. If the board is considering approval of this application, there is one condition outlined within the staff report, which is this application is subject to the approval of building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements. That's it.
Thank you. I think we did do disclosures. An applicant?
My name's Robert Talbot. I'm the general contractor on this job. The storefront that we replaced with the impact storefront was not the original storefront. It was replaced in 1997, and actually I worked on that project in 1997. The new storefront we put in actually returned the corner where the doors were removed to a window, which it was in 1997.
Do we have photos of that?
Pardon?
Do we have photographs of that?
You have the,
Perhaps we can have the photographs put back on the screen?
IT, could you?
well, I gave everyone a package. The package shows on the Southwest 2nd Street, the north side of the building, in 1997, we removed the door in the middle and put a window in. What we just did was put the door back in the middle. We then took the door we removed in 1997 and put it on the corner where there was a window previously. What we did is we put a window back where it was. So basically, we did not change an historical front. We changed the 1997 window. I pulled a permit for interior renovations for this building, and rather than put plywood up every year for hurricanes and that, the tenant said, let's look into going to impact, something new, something that looks good. So I submitted a permit for a revision to the city. The permit was approved. Now, I've worked in the historic district on and off for 20 years. When I submitted a permit to the building department, they would say, no, you have to go to historical. And I've done it on my own properties and on customers' properties. When I submitted this, no one said a word. They approved it. I got the inspections for it. Everything was fine. And then down the road, it comes up with this problem. If we would have known we would have needed the historic, we would have done it. But we weren't told by the city, and we did replace a storefront that's only 23 years old.
You keep referencing the 23-year-old storefront, yet we have no visual proof of that. We have no drawings in our packet.
I gave you the drawings.
It is in the packet.
It is?
Yeah, it's
Which drawing should we be
The first
looking
drawing shows the demolition.
you're going to be looking at your packet of information under item number 4 and the drawings that are included within the application.
Could you hold up what you're referencing? Because I don't see it here.
So within
First
the packet
drawing
number
is
4
number A1.
for UDP-HP 21017.
What are we looking at in A1? Demolition plan, you're saying?
It's a demolition, and if you
On
look
the next page.
at the front, it shows the storefront entrance in the middle of the building on 2nd Street. It shows removing a window on the corner of Third Avenue and Second Street. And then if you look at A7, which is the rendering for the elevations, it shows the storefront we took out of the middle, we moved to the corner and put a window in. And then there's drawings, are the picture of the 1997 renovation. This is the tenant's picture in 2019.
Okay.
And so the picture in 2019 reflects the exterior original architectural plan.
No,
You're showing on,
the picture in 2019 shows the 1997 renovation.
well then, I'm really confused. I'm looking
Arthur,
at-
go to A7 and you'll see the window he's referencing, and then it swaps back in. They just put that window, that opening, back in the, let's call it the after the fact
I'm
window that
looking
went
at
in.
The original architectural rendering, which is what we go by.
I don't think you'd be able to see it from there. I mean, it's very small in the corner.
It's very seeable.
It's very faint. It's in that right corner,
Right.
top side on A7, and you actually do kind of see it if you zoom in.
It's very clear.
So it's a window.
It's a door. We're talking about the corner.
I don't think we're talking about the same corner. Third and second.
A7 is the picture, the rendering of the 1997 change. It's not the original.
The one on the upper right on.
That is the plans.
No, it says original architect's plan.
It's not the original. If you look at A1, is original drawing. That was the demolition drawing to the original building in 1997. And on A1, if you look at the front, the right-hand upper part, it shows the entrance in the middle, a window in the corner.
Yep.
The rendering is the A7.
With all due respect, I hate to belabor the point, but I'm still confused because the demolition plan certainly shows a window being removed from the corner and doors and windows being removed from the main elevation.
Right.
Yet if you look on A7,
A7's the rendering,
well,
the
that's,
elevation rendering, which all blueprints have the elevation, what it'll look like when you're done with the construction.
I understand that. I understand that. But it shows a totally, all right, continue with your.
And all I'm asking us a permit. We went ahead and ordered the doors, we installed them, we had them inspected, and they were approved. And then after the fact, which, like I say, if we'd have known, we wouldn't have done it.
Let me ask a question, which I have to ask as chair. You said you're very familiar with the historic district. You've done work in the historic district.
Yes, I live
How
in,
could you not have known?
because every time, and I've probably pulled 8, 9, 10 permits there. Every time I've done it, I take my permit, I go to the building department, I submit it. Certain things, the building department gives me the permit. Certain things like fences and things like that, they go, you have to go to historical with drawings. This case, I brought it like I always do every time. I submitted it, and they gave me the permit. So I figured it was something that didn't need, because it was a 1997 front. It wasn't historic. And it's the same type of doors that are on half the buildings down there.
Do you have anything else?
Pardon?
Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Board?
I have a question for the city attorney. In a case like this, where a department of our city approved this work, rubber stamped it, and the gentleman went forward with the thought that everything was fine. what do we do now? That's basically, I mean, we can sit here and talk about what it should have been, could have been, might have been, but the fact is that he went downtown, he put an application in, he got a permit. It was approved by another department, and now the work is done. So is it as simple as it should go forward because the city approved it? Or do we have a discussion on what should be done? I mean, I in my heart, I can't see asking these folks to go back to square one and do this whole thing over and even do it differently.
And-
They got approval to do the work from the city. The work is done. And I think it's out of our hands. I don't think this is, I think where he is with his presentation and his story doesn't belong before this board. I think it's exempt from that because his past is that he got approved to do the work. And as unfortunate as that may be for someone who wants to argue the fact that it shouldn't have been done, the fact of the matter is he got approval to do it and he went forward and did it. And he did it in good faith.
Chair,
Where do we go with this?
Chair.
So unfortunately, Assistant City, sorry, Chair, someone. Okay. And unfortunately, what the case law says is even if a permit is issued in error, that the error does not relieve the applicant from all the requirements of the city code. So there's a pretty famous case where a building permit was issued, a building was constructed, and the court said, well, it was issued in error, so you have to demolish the building. In this particular case, you would have to review the criteria as presented for certificate of appropriateness after the fact to determine whether or not you should grant the certificate.
Well, it's a can of worms because we're talking about that issue. Then we're talking about the issue of 1997. And if he did restore, and I don't mean to say if you did, assuming that you did restore the building to its original or previous form, it's a can of worms. And my personal feeling about it is we can sit here for a long time talking about this. And I don't see the purpose in it, in doing
You
it.
have to bring these points up. That's why we're
Yeah,
here.
we're bringing it up, but I mean, my feelings on the matter is that this is a huge can of worms. It's unfortunate that it did go this way, but I don't think he's any so far off from where it's supposed to be, should have been, or might have been, that we can't say it's okay and approve it.
Arthur. Trish, when did you become aware of this here?
After the work was installed.
Okay. So there was no preview of anything preceding that, right?
No, the permit was filed as an interior work permit and then later came in as an amendment to that original permit. And because it was already signed off by Historic Preservation for interior work only, when it came in through an amendment, for some reason it wasn't referred back to me.
Okay.
But they put exterior work on that interior work only
I
permit.
just wanted to detail the processes that went through, that's all.
Your permit was for interior work?
The original permit was for interior work. And as we did the work, the tenant, who I did the work for, said, rather than put up all this plywood, which we had 15, 18 sheets of plywood in the back of the place every year, and it looks very not well. And the kids would graffiti it, all this. He said, let's put a beautiful impact window so we're safe all the time. We put the thing in. We also put a man door in.
I'm sorry, may I ask that applicant to speak into the microphone because we're actually recording the meeting. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Did it occur to you to go back for another permit once you realized that he wanted to do exterior work and you had a permit
I got a revision to the permit to include the storefront, and it was approved.
and it was approved?
And that was April of 2020, I got the inspections. I believe it was.
Other comments, Tom?
I have a couple comments.
Feel about what we're talking about?
The building department dropped the ball big time. That goes without saying. They should have caught that it was an historic district and there's extra hoops to jump through, and they did not. So it is what it is. But I do believe that the city did drop the ball on that. The building department.
But Arthur, if I could just make this one comment because of the issue of hurricane windows, safety, and, at some time we have to give consideration to things like hurricane windows.
I don't think there's any dispute about putting hurricane windows in. Nobody in South Florida today would certainly have a problem with that. The problem is the new building that we see today in the picture looks nothing like the historic building. That's a real concern, and that's why we're sitting here at the board.
But the storefront we replaced looked nothing like the original building.
We understand that, but that was then, this is now.
Well, that's the can of worms that I referred to before, and we can do we can talk a long time about all this.
Richard, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I go back to the same kind of point that I made with, the first application. I think there's got to be some deference here. It's probably more of a guideline issue to where we're looking at businesses and we're weighing onto them guideline applications, which hold a lot of weight to residential application, in my view. I mean, I can't sit here with a straight face and tell you a business owner can't utilize storefront glass that's impact rated and have to really question that when frankly, I don't think the elevation changed all that drastically. If you go to the plan, the original plan, which shows the exterior, it's grainy, but the shape of the building is intact. And you're never going to get, and I think it goes against even what we're doing at our core. We're not looking to replicate exactly. We're looking to keep it in context to what the historical district looks like. But we can't apply that and trace over the fact that this is a business district within the historic district. And I think that gets missed a lot. I really do. And I've pulled permits in the historic district. They absolutely do get flagged, and they go to Tricia, and Tricia has to review them. I'm not saying that the city didn't drop the ball here, but mistakes get made, and a mistake was made here, and I can see why. It makes a lot more sense when Tricia shed some light on it. So originally it was an interior permit, then it got added onto, okay, we missed it. But to retroactively or look at this and say, this doesn't work, we need to go backward, it frankly would be in conflict with what we did with the original super graphic, where someone came here with clean hands and said, hey, here's what happened. I've made a mistake, but here I am. I'm here to open it all up. We would very much be affecting the bottom line of this business if we were to say, hey, go backwards, take all this glass out and go back to where you started. And I'm not going to do that. I just can't. Morally, ethically, I think it's flawed. So maybe it's a guideline issue when we get to that point, when we can have a proposed amendment to look at something more technically on the business side of what we do. But for now, I'm going to take the applicant at his word. He's under oath. He's testifying here that he's saying that everything he did here was by the book. And I'm going to take him at face value. And I'm going to sit here and say that I don't see the aesthetic of the building, the elevation, changing far enough where I can sit here and say that I wouldn't approve it, despite the fact that the staff application, which I can appreciate, says otherwise. So I would say that it's, for me, something that works given the totality of circumstances that we're facing.
Just a few comments I have. With all due respect, this is very disappointing. I mean, with all due respect to everybody on the board, we are here because this is the Historic Preservation Board. And I know I keep saying that, but preservation is the middle name. And what we're tasked to do is look at buildings and help preserve important buildings in our city. I'm disappointed because, number one, the building department certainly dropped the ball. And I certainly want to know, what do we do in the future to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because I've been on the board a number of years and it has happened in the past. So it seems to be recurring, and unfortunately, the applicant is caught in the middle. At the same time, I still, looking at this building architecturally, you could not recognize it from today's photographs that it was a historic building. I really take issue with what everybody's saying. The windows are different, the door placement is different, the door placements are different. It's not a problem that it's two separate businesses. That's certainly the owner's prerogative, but I'm really concerned that it's totally changed the appearance. I'm looking at the original drawing because on this board, we don't have pictures of the 1997 renovation. We certainly believe your demolition plans and the work that you did, but at the same time, what we have to go on that's been submitted is the original drawing of the exterior.
I think
I'm
we do
just
have, we do have the 97 though. I think it's page 2 of the staff report.
We
At
don't
least-
have the original.
It's not the original.
That's not the, that's the 97.
This is the 1997
Right.
revision.
Right.
That's what I'm pointing out.
And the total elevation height between the revision that I did in 1997, the total, the doors
Well-
and the window is the same top height.
I understand that if that is the 1997 version, it's fine, but we're dealing today, we usually deal with what the building was originally designed as. And so it's unfortunate that the 1997 renovations did not comply with that. But typically, when we hear a case at the board, we go back to what the building was originally. Now, I agree with the rest of the board. We're not going to make you, I doubt it, go back and unbuild what you've built. But I'm wondering if there's an easier way where maybe you can just make the window on the corner lower to replicate the door opening and give a
The
sense of
tenant
the
who we did all this work for is no longer there.
the pardon?
The tenant who I did all the work for is no longer there.
But what does that have to do with my question?
Someone has to pay that bill.
Yeah.
The tenant paid that bill.
Oh,
So we can't make that work
It
happen.
shut down during the pandemic.
Right.
Oh, really?
well, but what I'm saying is an easy solution might be to just lower the window sill height and make it appear more like the
Would-
bigger door
You'd
opening.
have to lower down all the windows because
I'm
they
not
all
saying-
brought
I'm
up
not
to the
saying-
same height.
I'm just saying the one.
Okay,
That's proposing
okay.
for conversation.
I agree with you that the 1997 previous appearance doesn't resemble what's there today. But I also think that this is a huge conundrum,
It is.
and that to ask anybody to go back to square one, since square one was missed by the city, is a problem. And I think it's so complicated with respect to all the things we've heard that we need to make an exception here and not put this man through a reconstruction again.
I'd like to make a motion if the board's done commenting.
Sure, go ahead.
I would motion to approve the resolution for certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP HP 21017 located at 220 Southwest 2nd Street based on not so much the finding of facts. I would ask the city attorney to guide me here, but based on the findings within the guidelines, not as set forth in the staff report, because I believe everything here
What do you mean
reflects it
by
does
the
not.
guidelines not as set forth?
Well, everything here application-wise does not meet the criterion. So
Right.
I don't want to cite that because we're going against it. So I'll clean that up as best I can. To approve based upon the historical preservation guidelines, subject to the following conditions, being the application subject to approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements.
Can we ask the lawyer for the language that we should use so that we're not implicated in the fact that all of this doesn't meet the criteria? Is there some way we can change the language here so that it doesn't reflect that, or is that appropriate?
So for the benefit of, you can vote how you desire to vote, but for the benefit of the applicant and anyone who would challenge the decision of the board, it has to be based on a finding of fact that it does meet the criteria. So in other words, if you do approve the certificate of appropriateness and there's not sufficient evidence on the record to show that it meets the criteria based on which the board has to review to approve it, if anyone is to challenge the resolution in court, they might end up back here for another hearing on it. Given the circumstances, I guess you could weigh that risk, but I wouldn't suggest that the board state on the record that it does not meet the criteria. That's the finding that you need to find in order to support your approval.
So what language do you suggest?
That it meets the criteria of the code.
So you're saying keep the language as it is?
Yes.
So I'll restate that. So I'll motion to approve the resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDPHP 21017, located at 220 Southwest 2nd Street, based on the following facts, based on the findings and criteria outlined in the staff memorandum, meeting the criterion, subject to the following conditions: be that the application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements.
I would suggest substituting the staff memorandum with the deliberation of the board. I think there's enough in the record from yourself that should be sufficient.
So I would substitute the motion to reflect the deliberation of the board in place of the staff memorandum.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tim. Can we call the roll?
A resolution of the Historic Preservation Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations for the property located at 220 Southwest 2nd Street, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for an after-the-fact storefront window and door installation, case number UDP-HP 21017.
Ms. Lyons?
Approve? Yes.
Mr. Carney?
Yay.
Mr. Parker?
Approval.
Mr. Rosa? Yes. Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
Vice Chair Marcus?
Since I know this will pass, I'm only voting no just to make the point, but
I thought about the same thing.
but I do understand your conundrum here, and the board shares that conundrum.
Can we make this an instructive moment that somehow we can convey to the department that things should be better communicated before we get to this point?
David, with all due respect, and I wanted to ask Trish this, we've done this for years.
I know, but we've been to this door before, and the door has been smacked in our face before.
Can we have somebody from the building department come here, the building official, and talk to him about this process?
Potentially, but we have made improvements as far as the process and how we're reviewing building permit applications. We are using an entirely new program than what we used previously, and there was a time period where we were switching over from the old program to the new program, and I think this particular application came in that transition time. So I don't know. I can't speculate as far as was that the cause or not, but I am finding that we have less and less cases like this where they've actually come through for a building permit and it somehow was not reviewed by historic.
Well, we all hope so.
Yeah.
We all hope that the process works.
Is there someone who has to sign this new thing before it
So it's all done through a digital platform, and there is a historic preservation review stop within the digital program where I have to actually go in and sign off on each permit, and we flag it for the fact that it is a historic property or it's a historic landmark. And most oftentimes it's coming to me or I'm catching it. But I also get an email every time a new permit is initiated. I don't get an email every time we get a revision, but every time there's a new permit, so I can ensure that it's flagged appropriately.
Good.
So I think we've made a lot of progress. It's vastly improved from where we were, but there's still work, and it's something that we're consistently.
Several
taking a
years
look at.
ago, we had the same issue with owners who would come before the board and say, I didn't know I was buying in a historic district."
Yeah.
And that's when we had the building appraiser for Dade County, for Broward County, come here and speak. And actually, they added a line onto the page. Which buildings in Fort Lauderdale are noted that the building department would know to come to you? Just everybody in the Sailboat Bend district?
Well, we have two designated historic districts. We have the Sailboat Bend Historic District, and then we have the H1 Himmershey Historic District, which is where this building is located. And then we have about 65 individual historic landmarks designated throughout the city. All of those have the note that you're referring to in the Broward County Property Appraiser. So if someone pulled up their property on the Broward County Property Appraiser, they'd see that the fact that it is a designated property and does have my contact information. So I get phone calls about these structures on a regular basis.
Does the building department understand that they missed on this issue? I mean, I think they need to understand when they haven't really done the right job.
Yeah, like I said, we've made a lot of improvements over the past, I would say, 2 years, where utilizing this program is helping to identify structures that are designated throughout the city. And we haven't officially introduced her, but Vasila is the new planning assistant, and she's helping with the Historic Preservation Board. So you're probably getting some emails from her, but she's helped me flag every property that's designated in that program, so that it is helping even further to identify when structures are designated. And it has a little pop-up when
We know on
pull it
our
up.
end. Does the building department know on their end? That's what we're concerned
Yes,
about.
it's a program that's used by the entire building division for all permitting.
Well, let's hope it works.
Progress.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, we have another application here. We have to do the signage.
Pardon?
Oh, that's you. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like for me to review the staff report for this
Please.
item? This is a certificate of appropriateness for major alteration for the installation of a non-illuminated channel letter wall sign. The case number is UDP-HP 21016, and it's for a property that's located at 220 Southwest 2nd Street, also known as 214 Southwest 2nd Street, in the H1 or Himmershey Historic District. As I mentioned, this is for a non-illuminated channel letter wall sign on the north side of the structure facing Southwest 2nd Street. As we reviewed in the first application, the size and scale of a sign is something to take into consideration. In this case, the size and scale and placement of the sign that's proposed is appropriate for the structure and is compatible with the surrounding historic district as well as our guidelines specific to the H1 district. So in this case, the application does meet all of the criterion.
Thank you.
So with that, I will read the summary conclusion. In accordance with sections 472411 D3CI and 472411 D3CII of the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP-HP 21016, located at 220 Southwest 2nd Street, meets the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CI and meets the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CII of the ULDR. There is one condition listed for the board's consideration that this application is subject to the approval of building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures? I guess we went through this for the
Yeah,
property. Okay.
Yeah, I drove by it.
Applicant?
All right, thank you. First, I'm the owner of the building.
Okay.
It was my tenant that did the improvement before.
Introduce yourself.
You're right. Joseph Dawson, owner of the building. My tenant was the one that hired Mr. Talbot that did that. I was just the owner. He was my tenant. During COVID, he walked out in the lease and left me with a vacant building. So I'm very pleased, and I thank you for not making me have to fix his mess, because it would have been borne by me. So I want to thank you for that. As you can see, it's my desire to make sure I jump through the appropriate hoops necessary to be compliant with the things that you want us to do. As the owner of the building, I share your love for history. If you have the chance to come in to see the inside of the building, I put an all Chicago brick to really make it feel like a 100-year-old building. I also put landscaping on the side that's city property because I too want to improve the area. I think I'm compliant. I plan on doing everything that Trish says that I need to do with respect to approvals and licensing. And so I hope that I'm okay. But I want you to know that that wasn't me that created the other problem.
We understand. Thank you. David?
I might comment, you have an opportunity with
Please
that.
speak into the microphone.
Mike.
Speak into the mic.
I'm sorry. You have an opportunity with that new window kind of a thing
Mike,
to do,
David,
speak into
put the mic
mic.
in front of your
can you now? Okay.
Yes, much better.
Okay, I'll eat it. Anyway, you have an opportunity. I mean, this is way off. I'm out in the cloud. But you have an opportunity now with that window to do another sort of secondary advertising by putting your menu and other things like that that can help you as you grow in the area, which I think is nice.
Oh, and by the way, to jump back to the last issue, having the hurricane impact windows is a really nice thing because I bought the building in 2001. I was the one that did the 97 improvements as a tenant, ironically. I made the building have value, and then the guy sold it to me for a lot of money. But the hurricane-resistant windows are very helpful because every time there was a hurricane, I had to hire someone to put these metal things up, and it took hours to do. It was hard to store them, and so now with the hurricane-resistant windows, it's so much better. But yes, sir, I will note that, and I will see if I can somehow integrate that into the business plan.
board comments.
We've got a lot of, we got a green light from staff that all the stars are in alignment. So if nobody has an objection, I'll just make a motion to approve this. Oh, shucks. Why did I do that? Now I got to read
You
this.
have to read it.
Paragraph. Does
You want to hear from everybody, and then we'll make a motion.
Does any other board member have anything to say? I don't. Go ahead, Tim.
So a motion to approve with conditions, where am I reading? What am I looking for?
Last paragraph.
Last paragraph. The resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP HP 21016, located at 220 Southwest 2nd Street, based on the following findings of fact. Facts and findings as outlined in the staff memorandum. And if conditions apply, is subject to the following conditions, which are.
I'll second.
We have a second?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
But just to finish your thought, Tim, it's subject to the condition as outlined in the staff report, correct?
Yes. Subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
A resolution of the Historic Preservation Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations for the property located at 220 Northwest 2nd Street.
Southwest 2nd.
Southwest 2nd Street. Thank you for the correction. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for installation of a non-illuminated channel letter wall sign, case number UDP-HP 21016.
Thank you.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Carney?
Yay.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Mr. Chavon,
Yes.
Vice Chair Marcus.
Yes,
It's unanimous.
congratulations.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We're now up to case number 6, which is
5,
5.
Southwest 6th Street.
5.
5, I'm sorry, 5. Thank you.
Yeah.
Still the same
Number
address.
5, yeah.
Okay, I'll proceed with the staff report. This is the certificate of appropriateness for new construction for the addition of a garage and outdoor kitchen under case number UDP-HP 21019 for the Bender Residence, which is a historic landmark that was designated in 2019. The structure itself was originally constructed in 1924. The proposed scope of work includes 2 new additions. One is the garage, which is located on the west side of the structure. It's set back from the main front facade on this property. And then the other addition is a new outdoor kitchen on the east side of the structure. In this particular case, the main house, the structure, is the one that is designated. It's not the property. Typically, for historic landmarks, it includes the property, but in this situation, it does not. One condition of the original designation was that no new addition would be constructed in front of the main facade. So neither of these additions do that. They don't obstruct that viewpoint from Southwest 6th Street. The new additions are 1 story in height, and they are each separated from the facade of the main house through a connection point. So there is like a small hyphen or walkway or covered awning that connects from the main house to that new addition on either side. So the garage has a connection point that is actually behind another addition, so it's not very visible. It's set back from the main facade, so even lessening the ability to see it from the street. And there's another structure that is sitting in front of it. It's a 1-story, 1-bedroom apartment building that's there on the lot. On the other side is the new outdoor kitchen. It's open on all sides, just with the support columns. It's also set back from the front facade. You would be able to see it, but it does mimic the scale and size of a carport that sits in front of it. But overall, this project meets all of the criterion as outlined in the code. So with that, I'll read the summary conclusion. In accordance with sections 472411 D3CI and 472411 D3CII of the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction under case number UDP-HP 21019 located at 1100 Southwest 6th Street meets the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CI of the ULDR and meets the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CII of the ULDR. There are 2 conditions that are proposed for the board's consideration as outlined in the staff report. One is that all windows must have clear glass with an option of low E coating. And the second is the application is subject to the approval of zoning, building, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
Applicant?
Dan Imany with Mapo Builders. I couldn't said it better. She said exactly.
Could you lean into
I
the
could.
microphone a little bit better?
Dan Imany with Mapo Builders. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Trish.
You have nothing to add then?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Board comments? Nobody?
Looks like another home run, and it's a beautiful project, Michael.
I have some comments, not to shake
Huh?
everything up. I think it's a wonderful project. I agree. I think that the architect or whomever made some excellent decisions. I think the siding is really good because it pushes the addition back and doesn't bring it into the foreground. I remember this building when it came before us and a year or 2 ago, and I think it's been preserved beautifully. I really admire the fact that you've chosen to put a different type of roof on the garage. And I think that's very important in historic buildings because that way it shows that it was not historic and it was built in a different era. and it's important to vary the materials like that. So somebody coming along in 20 years hopefully won't mistake it for the original, but yet it goes with the original very well. And also, I can't resist in saying it, but you do show rectangular windows everywhere in accordance with the historic criteria. So with that, I'll entertain a motion, unless David?
I just want to comment in terms of, on the canopy thing, that is a permanent structure, right? Okay.
Is that a concrete canopy?
Aluminum.
Aluminum, okay.
Okay. Just curious.
So you'll hear the rain. That's all right. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Disclosures. Did you do
Oh,
disclosures?
we did not do disclosures, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I drove by it. I walked by it.
Oh, I've seen this many times.
I did not go by, but I'm familiar with the project from when it came before us.
I have nothing to disclose.
Nothing to disclose.
I walk by it all the time.
So with that, does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I would make a motion to approve the resolution for certificate of appropriateness for new construction under case number UDP HP 21019, located at 1100 Southwest 6th Street, based on the facts and findings as outlined in the staff memorandum and subject to the conditions set forth. All windows must have clear glass with the option of low E coating, and the application is subject to approval of zoning, building, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
I'll second.
A resolution of the Historic Preservation Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a certificate of appropriateness for new construction for the property located at 1100 Southwest 6th Street, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to construct an addition of a garage and an outdoor kitchen. Case number UDP-HP 21019.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Carney?
Yay.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa? Yes. Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
Vice Chair Marcus?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you all.
This is a nice,
This is the last project, although we still have more business.
I know, but I'm just saying, I want to chime in with, as you others said, this is really have enhanced this property immensely. It's really beautiful thing.
Good. Okay, thank you. So we're now on item number 6, 1430 West Broward Boulevard.
Would you like to do disclosures?
Disclosures?
I drove by it.
I'm familiar, I've been there.
I drove by.
Nothing to disclose.
No, nothing to disclose.
Drive by.
Okay, I'll proceed with the staff report. This is a certificate of appropriateness for major alteration for the installation of 2 new signs, one illuminated wall sign and an illuminated double-faced freestanding sign. This structure is located at 1430 West Broward Boulevard and is a non-contributing property in the Sailboat Bend Historic District. It currently has an administrative review application that has been submitted. It was submitted in April of 2020, and it's for the change of use from retail to automotive sales. Comments were issued back to the applicant in June of 2020, but planning staff is still waiting to hear back from the applicant, and the change of use has not been approved. It's just background information about this.
When you say comments, what do you mean comments?
So with an administrative review application, there are comments that are issued in response to the application to the applicant. This is more of a planning process that I'm describing, where the applicant is asking to change the use of the existing parcel from its original use as a retail store to an automotive sales property. So it's just background for the board to know what's going on with this parcel. The two new signs that are proposed, there's one that is proposed to be placed on the wall, and so that one would be placed on a location that I think originally had a sign there before, which was removed from the past, and that would be an internally illuminated channel letter wall sign. And then the second sign that's proposed is a freestanding illuminated double-faced freestanding sign, and it would be illuminated internally. Both of these signs don't necessarily agree with our criteria, where we do have criteria that talks about utilizing internally lit signs within historic districts. But it does, however, meet the criteria for the scale of the signs, where it talks about being compatible with the neighbors and within the context and its location. So in this particular instance, it is compatible with the other businesses that are along Broward Boulevard in similar locations. But our design guidelines do state that it highly discourages internally lit box signs and channel letter signs. So with that, I'll read the summary conclusion. In accordance with section 472411 D3CI and 472411 D3CII of the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP-HP21021 located at 1430 West Broward Boulevard does not meet the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CI of the ULDR and does not meet the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CII of the ULDR. There are two conditions that are proposed for the board's consideration. The first is there needs to be evidence of removal of existing painted wall signs that must be provided prior to submitting a permit application for additional signs on this property, which I failed to mention, but there are two painted wall signs that are not permitted on the structure right now. As part of the application, the applicant did identify the fact that those two wall signs that are existing would be removed prior to the installation of these new signs if they were to be approved. And the second condition is that this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
Thank you. Applicant?
Okay. Hi, my name is Melissa Weatherwax. I was sworn in. So to address first of all,
Speak a closer
to address
the
first of all,
bring the mic closer.
as the not the last person, but the person before me had also stated, when, like she said, we're supposed to remove the painted signs before we submit for permit. We've already submitted for permit because that's how you're told that you need to come before the historic board. So we do have evidence in there that we are planning on removing those signs. And as Trish had also stated, we're not asking to get any special exception or special privilege. This building was considered part of the historic board in 1992. There have been permits given to this property as well as the property to the left and the property to the right to have illuminated signs since 1992. Dunkin' Donuts signs are illuminated, and you can see them in the previous tenant in the building we're discussing. Their signs were also illuminated. And I've also got here the code she's talking about. It doesn't say that we cannot have eternally illuminated. It states that no signs shall not be illuminated by exposed tubes, exposed bulbs, or similar light sources. Flashing signs, rotating signs, and animated signs are prohibited. So as long as we can internally illuminate without showing our tubes or our bulbs or anything like that, then we should be allowed eternally illuminated signs.
Okay, I have the standalone sign. Okay. I'm looking at that. Help me visualize a little bit better the size of it compared to Dunkin' Donuts. next door. I mean, I, I can't mentally see one is so much bigger than the other. You know what I mean?
Understood, yes. Do we have a size for your proposed sign?
The size for our proposed sign, yes, you do. It's in your package.
Which
is-
page would it be on?
10 feet.
I think it's showing 10 by 5.5.
Page 3, I think. If you look on page 3,
So you can see it here.
yeah.
Okay.
And do you know how this compares, as David is asking, to the?
I'm not sure the exact size of the Dunkin' Donuts sign. I do have their original permit. Let me see if it says anything about, it doesn't give a size on their original permit card showing that they were allowed illuminated signs. They don't have the size in the description.
Okay, just obviously you can't put
mean,
them
I
right
do
next
have-
to each other,
In
but
your
I mean,
package, you do have photos of the existing Dunkin' Donuts sign.
Right, yes, we
Yeah.
see that.
I do, yeah.
I see on page 1 of the staff report, it's showing 10 by 5.5. Is that accurate?
Where are you seeing?
Page 1, staff report at the bottom. It's, I can zoom in, I can cheat on my,
Well, that's the same rendering that is on the other
Okay.
page,
I mean,
larger
obviously, our
pa-
pole is
larger rendering.
is a lot taller than Dunkin'.
If you look on,
Donuts.
yeah, if you look on page 1 of the packet, of the drawing packet,
right. So Dave, what are you trying, you're trying to just get the idea of scale versus Dunkin' Donuts, basically?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, since the new detached sign is going to be right next to where the exiting to Dunkin' Donut
Right.
and so forth, to see comparable sort of mentally the two of them. That's all I'm just doing. And I'm not saying it's good, bad, or otherwise. I'm just thinking of what we have right there.
Unfortunately, I was not necessarily prepared for that question.
Well,
that's okay.
I'm just trying to visualize
Sure.
it. That's all. It's just me.
Well,
Slow.
my only comment is I would have to agree with staff that we're dealing with today. We're not dealing with what Dunkin' Donuts did. And in order to comply with the regulations that are part of the historic district, one would think it'd be relatively easier to change a sign than to move a door or a window.
Yeah.
And there are some options that we can do to change the sign. And whenever I stated what I was stating, I just wanted to make it clear that we weren't asking for any special permissions that have not already been granted in the area.
We understand.
We could
Yeah.
make it opaque if that would,
Well, I think that's a question to Trish in terms of what would work to comply with the code.
right, and I know she understands, like, if we made it opaque, it's going to make each letter kind of stand out individually, and only specific portions in the evening would show up. And it would mostly be just the black and the red.
So when you say opaque,
Mm-hmm.
you mean, what are you exactly saying?
It's kind of like it's a vinyl that we use, and at night it doesn't, like, instead of making it look like one big thing is all lit up, it's only going to light up certain portions, which in this would be the black and the red. So the white would kind of almost disappear at night.
I would have to ask our Tricia if that would be acceptable under the code.
As far as the lighting is concerned, that's one aspect of the design guidelines for considering new signs when you're talking about internally lit signs. And there's other parts of the commercial section that talks about appropriateness for signs. Part of it is looking at the exact context, which in this case, there are several of these type of freestanding signs right in the same area, and they have similar sizes. So in that case, when you're taking a look at it, it does meet that aspect. But in general, these type of signs are not encouraged within the design guidelines. So it's a little bit of a analysis
Okay.
as far as
So in other words,
not necessarily a straightforward yes, because when you're looking at the design guidelines, it doesn't say it encourages these freestanding signs like this, but it also you won't need to take a look at your surroundings and the context, but it does specifically talk about how a sign should be lit.
Okay. And then we also have the second sign, which is the sign on the awning on the building, which has also been part of the application. And does anyone have any comments on
But
anything?
that's the question on that one is the lighting. Is that correct on that? That
Well,
sign?
this was the size on this one.
Yeah.
I don't see any issue with either sign in this case. I mean, it's Broward Boulevard. You're talking about a street that has almost 55,000 cars that drive it every day. I think to allow Duncan to look at and I'm using staff response here. We should weigh signage compatible to the scale of the building, adjacent buildings, the streetscape, and adjacent signage. And you look at that for a moment. You have Dunkin' Donuts. I don't see why a smaller locally owned business can't have the same resource available to it as signage 24/7, and be lit up. I can't speak to what the applicant has mentioned regarding the technical aspect of the lighting itself, but I certainly appreciate her having done the work to understand where the lighting, call it shop details, need to be right in order for it to be in compliance with our guidelines. I just have an issue, again, going back to why we're weighing the guidelines in the same way we would as if this were in more or less a residential aspect where I'm struggling with it. I want to approve it as is. I think it looks the part. It's not like we're looking at a billboard and they're trying to abuse the system and put out some ridiculous, unrelated advertisement. It's their business, quite literally. And I take issue with us looking at it otherwise. I completely, and Tricia made a great point, and staff made a great point. Generally, it's a weighing of the issues. And in this case, I give deference to the fact that I'd like to see the business owner provided every advantage, and certainly can't imagine paying what they're paying as a commercial rent shouldn't come with the advantage of being able to utilize it for advertisement, period.
And in addition to what you're saying, I mean, we've had this issue before on Broward Boulevard. And one of the things we've seen is that obviously the neighborhood, the strip along Broward Boulevard, is vastly different than the rest of the historic district.
Well said.
So in a sense, I certainly agree with you that we need to take a look at the context here.
Just for a point of clarification, the design guidelines that I'm referencing within the staff report are specifically related to our commercial design guidelines.
Sure.
Not necessarily the residential ones. We do have a specific section on commercial signage.
So to answer the question that has been raised, why is the Dunkin' Donuts sign, when was that allowed?
2003.
Pardon?
2003.
2003. Precedes everybody here. So we don't know what the decision was in that case.
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
I understand.
So that was 2003. Then there was another one that was done in, see what the date is on this one. This is for a different sign in the area, and this is 2017. And then this is another sign that was in the area, and this one is, if I can find the date on here for this one.
Are these signs you're referencing, were they all illuminated as well?
Yes. That's specifically why I pulled them, because they're all illuminated signs that were approved after this became part of the historic district.
Again, it's almost the idea, the precedence. We started something and
Absolutely.
we're following through, and we can't take it out on so much on the applicant, because it's a practice we've evolved.
Well, every decision we make sets a precedent in some way. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Come on, Tim, you're good at.
You're on a roll
Yeah,
today.
I'll make a motion. Absolutely. Let me get my paperwork out here. I will make a motion I will make a motion to approve the resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for major alteration under case number UDP HP 21021 located at 1430 West Broward Boulevard based on the following findings. Staff memorandum. and subject
That
to
would
the
be,
following
that would be the
conditions,
board's
evidence of
deliberation.
removal. Am I out of line here?
Rather than staff memorandum, which says that it doesn't meet any of the conditions, I think you meant to say the board's deliberations.
It was based on our discussions that we're coming to the conclusion to
Okay.
proceed to
Do
approve
you
it.
want me to repeat that? I'm sorry.
That would be up to the recording secretary. You're fine?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, should I read the evidence of removal, the conditions? Evidence of removal of existing painted and wall signs must be provided prior to submitting a permit application for additional signs of the property. And this application is subject to the approval by building zoning and all ULDR requirements, including landscape.
I'll
And
second.
I do have, I'm sorry, I'll let y'all finish. I had one quick question for Trish, but go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry, whenever you were speaking of the applicant previously,
Please
that's not
speak into the
something I
mic.
am-
Speak into the microphone.
That's not something I am part of. I don't know if you're referencing like their business tax receipt that they're still trying to apply for to become a dealership, and I don't know if that's going to hold up our process, because I know a lot of cities ask for a BTR or certificate of use
Yep.
before, and I don't think Fort Lauderdale requires us to show that.
It is my understanding that it is required
Okay.
prior to obtaining a sign permit.
So I just want to make sure that way when I get back with them with this, I can ask them where they are on that.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
So
Okay.
one question, are we sure then this is going to become the business that's illustrated?
I hope so if they're paying me to be here.
Okay, just checking.
Okay,
I have to ask the question.
I second. I'll go ahead.
A resolution of the Historic Preservation Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations for property located at 1430 West Broward Boulevard, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for installation of one illuminated wall sign and one illuminated double-faced freestanding sign, case number UDP-HP 21021.
Ms. Lyons?
No.
Mr. Carney? I'm sorry, was that yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa? Yes. Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Marcus?
No.
Passed 42.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we have one topic left, and there's more than one issue that's not printed here. I guess, is there any communication to the city commission? I guess not, we've not talked about anything. Then we're on, for the good of the city of Fort Lauderdale. Tricia, maybe you can take over from here?
Sure. So the first business under for the good of the city is to elect a chair and vice chair. This is something that has to be done every June, although last month we did not have quorum, so we could not vote on a chair and vice chair. So I'm not sure if it matters which order it goes in as far as nominating a chair and a vice chair and then voting on each position individually.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is like Jason, is he at the end of his run or could he be
Doesn't-
chair again?
Yeah, it doesn't
Could
matter.
we have the same chair and the same vice chair?
You can.
You can?
No?
You can.
We can.
Can.
All right.
So you have to nominate them.
Well, is it my turn?
Yes. Go ahead.
It's
your night.
I would like to nominate our current chair and our current vice chair
You
to
have to do it
continue their
separately.
position. And I believe that's Jason and Arthur. Excuse me for my
No problem.
my short circuit.
Wait, are
They
there
need
any other
to be voted on separately, or does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so Richard seconded the motion.
Yep.
Okay, ready? Ms. Lyons?
Approve, yes.
Mr. Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Parker? Mr. Rosa? Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Marcus?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
And this is concerning the former Castro Convertibles building located at 2860 North Federal Highway in Fort Lauderdale, which is, right now, it's the Ferguson showroom. And I had asked to put a picture on the screen. I don't know if we can do that.
Could we get the presentation back up?
I would like to request that an item be added to the next HPB meeting agenda regarding the recent sale of the landmark Ferguson's building at 2860 North Federal Highway in Fort Lauderdale, which was designed by the noted mid-20th century modern architect Charles McKirahan, and to discuss governmental processes available for its preservation and protection. My letter to the editor of the South Florida Sun Sentinel newspaper on this topic was published on May 30th, 2021, under the heading Another Landmark at Risk, and echoes the sentiments expressed today, and I have distributed this letter to the board. There needs to be a mechanism within the city of Fort Lauderdale to review the sale and or transfer of landmark buildings such as this and understand the impacts of such transactions. Perhaps these landmarks at risk need to appear before the Historic Preservation Board to better discuss and understand their cultural, historical, and architectural contributions to our city. Every means needs to be available to open lines of communication to new owners to enable their understanding of the importance of their building as part of our shared community history. Every time one of these buildings is sold, it raises the possibility of demolition, since none of these mid-century masterpieces are protected from demolition or from desecration. While we do not know the intentions for this particular property, at the very least, new property owners of such significant buildings should be invited to a meeting with city officials to discuss the prominence and provenance of the building and what are the new owner's intentions. The city of Fort Lauderdale has called this area, in their own words, the So Oak, or South of Oakland Park, mixed-use pedestrian district, which responds to the existing development patterns and includes the adaptive reuse and preservation of existing structures with unique or noteworthy design characteristics, of which there are many in this proposed district. The architectural works of Charles McKirahan are iconic examples of the mid-century style. His architectural work in Fort Lauderdale attests to his standing as the unsung hero of mid-century South Florida architecture, since McKirahan strongly influenced other architects with his bold and inventive forms and designs. When looking at historic architecture, we must take ourselves back to the time when these buildings were designed. In the 1950s and 1960s, these were very original forms, reflective of their time and original in their artistic vision. And these forms remain inventive today, even as viewed through our contemporary eyes. As much or more than any other city in the country, Fort Lauderdale is the repository of a trove of mid-century modern art masterpieces. As a community, we must quickly find a way to preserve and protect these important legacies, such as 2860 North Federal Highway, so that they may remain as viable members of our community. There's a growing interest in cultural tourism around the country in order to preserve and protect iconic architecture such as this building, and Fort Lauderdale needs to be a part of this movement. I hope this discussion may further everyone's understanding of the value of these treasured architectural masterpieces that we have right here in our own city, many of which were designed by Charles McKirahan, who was an internationally recognized architect who lived and based his firm right here in Fort Lauderdale and designed buildings internationally. This is a part of our shared cultural heritage, which I certainly hope that we are wise enough to protect and preserve. Thus, I am asking the board to vote to discuss this issue at our next meeting. Thank you. As I understand it, we can't discuss an issue at the same meeting that the issue is raised, but the board needs to vote on approving the discussion for the next meeting.
Point of order, though. The discussion topic needs to be within the scope of the purpose and the duty of the board. My concern is I'm not clear on what the discussion in particular to this particular property is, because there are very strong property rights concerns that
That's why
this
we-
may bring forward. The code provides a very specific way of dealing with the preservation of historic properties, which is through the historic designation process, which affords the property owner with notice and a opportunity of due process to go through in that process. I'm not certain if I'm understanding clearly what this discussion.
What I'm asking is to discuss what processes are available to us for the preservation and protection of this building. We've seen a building just one block north of this building in the Times Square Shopping Center be totally desecrated in the last few years. I call it death by 1,000 cuts because it's totally unrecognizable today. That's what I'm trying to prevent. I think we need to be proactive in this city, and I specifically did not mention designating it historic, but I wanted to see what else short of that or including that could be discussed. I mean, certainly discussions with our historic preservation officer are certainly within the bounds, I would think, but I would think there would be more options available than just
No,
that.
what becomes problematic is that the board sits as a finder of fact and the decision maker in a quasi judicial process, and not necessarily as the initiators of the process. If we were, because you sit as the fact finder and decision maker, so you're supposed to be in the impartial judge when it comes to these items. If that becomes an example for the discussion versus the focus of the discussion, I'd be a little bit more comfortable. But focusing on a particular property in a process that is not outlined has some serious constitutional property rights issues.
I didn't understand something you just said. If that becomes, explain your last statement. I mean, I'm not quite sure what we can.
The focus of your discussion appears to be what can we do to do something about the sale of this property.
Well, what can we do to understand what's happening with the building, which we don't know?
And my issue is the focus on this particular property. If
Well, I'd be happy to focus on the entire district.
well, that would be a little bit more acceptable.
Really? Well, then I would change it to the entire district then.
That
I'm sorry, David, explain. Right. There are some groups that are starting right now. Yeah. But well, I'm getting
Yeah,
confused.
I just didn't know what the process is that we were talking about here. It just seemed the discussion was talking about the transfer, the sale of the property, and us for the need to protect it. So, I mean, there are designated or outlined processes like historic designation that are outlined in our code that allow for the protection of the property, but also protection of property rights by giving the property owners due process. I am concerned about us or this board discussing a particular property without notice to the property owner, without a due process set forth in which they can have some discussion with regards to what this board is deciding to do with regards to an action towards their property.
So, two questions. Why can't we give notice to the applicant that we're discussing this? Or number two, if you're uncomfortable with a single building, I'm happy to revise the request and deal with the whole So Oak district.
And that would be preferable.
Okay.
I have a question. And hearing what you said, and your letter was very well spoken and hits on a lot of important things, but aren't we really talking about the goal here is to have the city improve the process that we are currently struggling with? And I don't want to oversimplify this, but I did spend a lot of time with Tricia, and I spent a lot of time with Abby and Anthony, and we spoke a lot about ownership rights and notification. And I thank you, sir, for making the point that any property that comes up before this board or two that has the potential to be declared historic, the first person that should know about that consideration is the person who owns that property. That's only fair. Now we go to the process. What is slowing our process down? Why is there so much negativity? Well, I think one of the biggest problem is money. Now, if you were going to this building and you were able to go to the current owner and offer them some sort of something, not only you, wrong word is incentive, a deal. This man or this, forget this property. Any building that's going to be historic needs the ownership to be ready and willing to be part of that process. They should be passionate about it. They should want to do it. They shouldn't have to do it. So when we talk about things, when you said, what resources does the city have to, preserve this building? Well, there's only one real resource that the city doesn't offer, and that's money.
Yeah, but I disagree.
Well, why would anybody want to do it if they had to pay the bill?
I think part of the focus of this board needs to be education. And we're here as much as a board as we are trying to educate the public and the city. The process failed 2 or 3 blocks north in the Times Square shopping center, where the curving building right on the corner of Oakland Park and A1A has been totally changed. Another McKirahan building, the red screen has been taken down, and a series of irregular windows have been placed in the facade so that now it is totally unrecognizable. I understand from the city's viewpoint that the only vehicle available is designating it as historic. But why can't we just sit down with a property owner or call him in here and talk about the significance of his property? Most of the time when these people buy these buildings, they have no idea that it was designed by an internationally famous architect.
And that's important, Arthur, but I think at the end of the day, there's still the financial burden of maintaining the property, complying with the city's requirements to be historic. If we have replacement and we want to fix it up, it is a very arduous responsibility. And if you don't want to do it, if it's not in your gut, these gentlemen that just showed us that beautiful property, that was such a nice example of when the system works. They want to do that. They have the funds to do it. But the way our system is set up, quite frankly, is we could have told them that they have to do that.
So
That place could have been, that property could have been declared historic, and we could have gone in there and told them you need to do A, B, C, and D.
It was declared historic.
Well, and then the owner could have said, how in the hell am I supposed to do that? I got 3 kids to send to college. I don't have the money to put a a roof on it with the tile from
where-
Chair-
1925.
So Chair, if I may then,
Oh.
for the discussion point at the next meeting, if there is consensus in the board for it, it would be discussing options for
Well,
what type of
educating the
properties?
owners, options for designating the building or not.
Because are
Designation
these
is one.
buildings that you're talking about considered historic resources, or, I mean, what,
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
are these buildings that you're talking about considered historic resources?
Yes.
Would that be appropriate
Well,
to
I would
call
have
it
Tricia
that, or?
answer that. Tricia.
Actually designated.
No, not designated.
Potential for designation.
I think he wants the board to brainstorm a broader options for protecting these types of properties. I was just wondering how they would classify these properties for the sake of the agenda.
I do not believe there's been an evaluation of these structures.
Okay, so
Well, they are
So
part,
prob-
they are part of the, there's a survey.
so discussion on options for potentially historically significant properties.
Well, I'd like to say protect and preserve the properties. I don't know what.
Okay,
legally-
protect and preserve properties. So if that's the consensus of the board for next meeting's discussion,
Well, I'd like to hear everybody on the board's opinions on this before.
I think it's an
well, I
excellent.
think that would be the discussion point.
No?
No?
Well, whether to bring it forward or not?
Okay.
No, I believe we should bring it forward next meeting. I would like to see a discussion next time.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind having an additional meeting to just talk about that period. Because I think it's very important for us to bring forth all these issues. And you're right, it is a matter of education.
It is.
It is a matter of exchanging information. And it is also a matter of the reality of the economic impact that someone has to pay the bill.
Oh, understood. But I think the first step is still education. And we don't do enough of that in the city. With all due respect, Trish, I know you can't be everywhere at one time, but we saw what happened, as I said, with the Times Square Center, and we all just fear that this can happen to all of these buildings.
But what would have been different, Arthur, if they were educated in Times Square?
Well, then they.
What would have saved that and preserved that? If
Let's-
not,
let's-
if not
let's-
somebody came up with the.
Let's discuss it next time.
Okay.
So the issue is really whether the board would like to discuss this issue or not.
I'm all for it. We can only make things better if we talk about it.
I agree.
I
already
think we
did.
have consensus for,
We have
Special meeting?
or a special meeting. No, I thought
I
I had an
think-
agenda
I thought that they did need to make a motion to place
it on.
it on the agenda.
Can't we get together outside this format and still comply with the sunshine laws? It has to be here and it has to be this.
Tim,
format.
It has to be
suggestion,
formal.
maybe perhaps if it passes and we do discuss it, if we see that the discussion is going on and there are more subtopics, maybe at that point,
Okay.
we take it a little further.
Whatever you want to do.
So you're,
Sure, if you would entertain a motion at this time.
so one clarification, Mr. City Attorney. We are talking about the whole district rather than one building.
Yeah.
So
Talking
what
about
I'm-
the whole process.
So what I gathered from what you were saying, I'm looking at the purpose and duties of the board, and there is a purpose to advising and assisting property owners and other persons or groups, including neighborhood organizations, which are interested in historic preservation. And it seems to me that you're trying to figure out how the board can do more to highlight that purpose.
Well, I don't see any grassroots effort ongoing in Fort Lauderdale other than the Sailboat Bend and the Himarshi District.
And you're trying to figure
That's
out
it.
how to do
Well,
more.
how do we look at the rest of the road? Nobody has ever taken an interest, as far as we can see, in these mid-century buildings. And we have a treasure trove here, and we don't even know the value that what we have.
The same thing's true of other areas in the city, Victoria
Absolutely.
Park, for example.
Sure. Well, you have to start somewhere.
I agree. Yes.
Well, Tricia already said that there are, I don't know how many individually designated buildings in the city. How many?
There are 65.
Okay.
They're on the website, yeah.
Yeah, we have them all on the website on an interactive map.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Are
you know, I-
these included, some of these mid-century buildings?
I mean, not the ones you're specifically referring to, but
I'm not allowed to refer to one now.
but we've talked about before that over the last few years, we've applied for several grants to conduct architectural resource surveys, and the results of those surveys are available on our website. So that's one form of evaluating structures citywide through a methodic way, going neighborhood association by neighborhood association. So right now we are completing a grant that has been evaluating Poinciana Park and Croissant Park. And so that report is being finalized and should be available towards the end of August. And we did apply for a grant last year that we've just been made aware that we've been awarded to prepare a strategic historic preservation plan for the city of Fort Lauderdale. So we're going through the process of obtaining approvals to move forward with that grant, and then we would be obtaining an outside consultant to help us with those conversations to prepare a strategic plan for the city. So there's things that are in progress that contribute to the type of conversation that you're having, but just wanted to point those out.
Curious, is there any liaison with any of the programs like at Atlantic University or so forth on urban studies or anything like that, that we could draw the academic world to have students start to do some of this, or why?
Yeah, it's.
I mean, it's a big challenge.
I would say, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Tricia, that typically I found it's really helpful to have a historic preservation consultant who has the credentials doing these kinds of analyses, because it will be depended upon in many future decisions.
Okay.
So, did we have a motion for
Started to.
for the placement of this as a
I'll make the motion
topic?
to add the discussion to Mr. Marcus's proposal to next month's agenda.
I'll second it.
Under for the good of the city?
I'd like to put it on the agenda. Can we do that?
I think it has to be. I mean, it would be under for the good of the city on the agenda.
Right.
Because it's not a quasi judicial item.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
That's correct.
So it would be titled discussion of the South Oakland Park area.
Correct.
Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Okay.
And it may be helpful to provide a map to the board or something that shows what we're talking about.
That'd be a good idea because I have.
And the
No idea
the
what you're
buildings, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but I think education has to start with the board.
Are you specifically referring to the area that was identified in the master plan for
The South Oakland Park District.
okay,
yeah.
those boundaries?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, okay.
Then if we can pull it up as part of
And
that
do we
master
have
plan.
survey pages of the buildings in that district?
No,
We don't yet.
this particular area has not been surveyed for an architectural resource survey.
So I'm just thinking because I don't mean to be promoting myself, but I just published a book on photographs of mid-century modern architecture in South Florida, which includes Fort Lauderdale and Miami Beach. Half the book is Fort Lauderdale, and at least 3/4 of the buildings in Fort Lauderdale were designed by Charles McKirahan. So I think it might be helpful to somehow show pictures or show the board what we're talking about.
Could you get us copies of your book?
I can give you the link on Amazon.
Okay, give me the, I'll buy it.
Okay, I will. I'll send it to Trey.
Amazon.com.
Just Google my name.
I will.
So we have a motion on the floor. We have a second.
All in favor?
Yeah, do all in favor.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, everyone. I think it's a very important topic, and I think it's something we never really address on this.
I think it's wonderful, and I think it's long overdue. And I have to tell you, I was the odd man out on this thing several years ago. I was appointed here at large as a guy who didn't come in with the qualifications as an architect or a historian or a teacher.
But you're a property
But
owner.
I love being part of this team.
Great.
I respect everybody on it. I've learned so much. It's invigorating. I do have some very strong feelings about certain things, and I hope I get the same respect in return for the things I stand for. But I've enjoyed myself here. Outside of my first round in this exercise, I had a rough start, but we got through that, and I think we are going in a very good direction to continue to talk about what our goals are, how we can achieve them, and what is a practical implementation of historic preservation, conservation, education. All these things are so important. It's like any relationship. When you don't talk about it, you can't come to any good end. So it's better that we talk and we figure it out and try to do the best we can. I think we all want the same thing. We just have different ways about going about it. Thank you all very much for your time.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Amen.
Second.
Adjourned.
All in favor?